The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are simply that, opinions. All are presumed innocent until proven otherwise in a court of law. Sensitive topics are discussed. Discretion is advised.
What was the name given by the FBI agent?
Jim McIntyre. I gave Jim McIntyre access to literally everything. My email accounts, my social media accounts, absolutely everything.
Who told you to move?
Jim McIntyre.
Why?
Because he said that if we stayed in one place too long, that we might be found, that it was dangerous.
You located Mr. McIntyre, right?
No, ma'am.
You hired a private investigator to find him?
No, ma'am. I hoped the state would do that, but y'all didn't really care that much.
The fate of Nicholas Cassotis will soon be in the hands of a jury. Deliberations begin in about an hour. Will the jury buy his Jim McIntyre defense? Plus, we're going to break down the defendant's speech patterns on the stand. How is he coming across to the jury in the courtroom? Also this hour, a serial killer's daughter allegedly murdered 25 years later. Her husband is arrested. Opening statements in his trial begin this morning. And guilty. We'll have reaction to the verdict in the fugitive sex offender trial for Nicholas Rossi. It's all next right here on Opening Statements. And welcome to Opening Statements. I'm Ted Rollins in for Julie Grant on this Thursday morning. So glad to have you aboard today. Busy day here at Court TV. Ooh, that Nicholas Cassotis. That was something else yesterday. Will the jury believe anything that man had to say on the stand? Did he hook somebody? We'll soon find out. They're going to have his fate in their hands in about an hour. We'll be talking about that. Plus, we have a new live trial kicking off in about an hour. Fascinating case also out of Georgia. Christopher Wolfenbarger. He's accused of killing his wife. She was the daughter of a serial killer, and he, the serial killer, in a roundabout way, helps to find the answers in this question. It's a fascinating one. First, as we always do, though, on this show, time for a look at the Daily Docket.
We, spoke to him, and he made statements indicating that he had committed these heinous acts.
Our suspect's DNA has been a positive match to the DNA that we suspected to belong to our suspect at the scene. What we heard consistently is what a loving mother and father they were, loving husband and wife. They absolutely protected those girls.
All right, Daily Docket today in Arkansas. Defendant Andrew McGann expected in court to enter a plea this morning. He, of course, is accused of killing a couple who were hiking with their children at Devil's Den State Park in Arkansas. Court there begins 9 a.m. Eastern time. Also 9 o'clock Eastern in Kentucky. Defendant Felicia Gross in court for her arraignment. The mom was charged earlier this week in the death of her 10-year-old son, Jaden Spicer. And then, of course, in Georgia, deliberations begin in the dismembered wife murder trial for Nicholas Cassotis. That's where we're going to begin the hour. The jury's set to return to the courtroom next hour. They're going to get instructed by the judge, and then it's time for them to take the case. The former Navy JAG officer, Cassotis, is accused of killing his wife, Mindi, then dumping her dismembered remains on a local hunting property. We saw him take the stand on Wednesday, and it was something else. Prosecutors say Cassotis created a web of lies about a top-secret job that put him and Mindi in danger. But the defense points to a man named Jim McIntyre, who was at the center of all of this. Let's begin with Court TV legal correspondent Kelly Craft. She's covering the case and has more on what to expect this morning.
Either the defendant, Nicholas Cassotis, is the unluckiest man in the world, or he's a murderer. That's what the prosecutor said during closing arguments on Wednesday. This morning, the judge is reading the jury instructions to the jury, and then they will begin deliberating. Nicholas Cassotis took the stand Wednesday saying he did not kill his wife, and also he explained his feelings about the man named Jim McIntyre.
Do you think that there was a person named Jim McIntyre?
I do not believe that was his name, no.
How does that make you feel?
Angry, betrayed, frankly dumb.
Do you know who killed your wife, Mindi Kassotis?
I do not.
When the prosecutor cross-examined him, presenting him with evidence including numerous totes found near Mindi's remains in the woods, he denied the totes were his.
So your testimony, that's not your tote?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
That is your tote.
No, ma'am, it is not. My testimony is that it is not my tote.
So the other one, the gray one, that's also not your tote?
I would call that the gray one, ma'am, but I believe that is also not my tote.
Just so we're clear. My apologies. These two totes are not your totes?
That is correct.
There are two random black and gray totes that showed up on November 29th of 2022 in the vicinity of the Portal Hunting Club, and they're not yours?
Objection, asked and answered.
Overruled.
I'm not sure when they turned up, ma'am, but they are not mine.
Cassotis is facing several charges, including malice murder and felony murder.
All right, thanks to Kelly Craft. She'll be with us throughout the day here as the jury gets this case. Is anyone going to buy this Jim McIntyre story? Here to discuss, attorneys John Phillips and Michael J. Brown. Oh, wow. Okay. Jim McIntyre. Let's start with you, Michael. Your thoughts on that? I mean, this dude delivered it with certainty. I mean, he played the part. What did you take from his testimony, and do you think the jury is going to believe him?
Hey, good morning, John. Good morning. I don't think so, and I think this jury is going to bail out on the free lunch, and they'll be back by lunchtime. And I say that because, you know, it's a double standard in the sense that often prosecution witnesses are very rehearsed, and they come across that way. But juries generally don't like when the defendant is so rehearsed, and they don't show emotion, they don't show any spontaneity, and I think that's how he came across. Extremely rehearsed, extremely according to script. And quite frankly, we talked about this last week, he's the smartest guy in the room, but unfortunately, there's so many things that he has said over the course of the investigation and the prosecution that are going to come back to bite him because they're inconsistent, they are clearly untruthful, and what will happen is the prosecutor used those against him, basically saying, hey, you can't believe anything he said, and you certainly then can't believe anything he said on the stand. So bottom line is, Ted, I think that they're going to come back and fairly quickly.
John Phillips, can't wait to hear your thoughts.
I mean, you know, where in the world is Carmen Sandiego? Where in the world is Jim McIntyre? You know, why didn't anybody bring him to court? Does the guy exist? I'm... You know, last week I was convinced maybe there was somebody named Jim McIntyre, and after hearing all the spiel from his testimony, I just think he's a figment. Maybe FBI stands for, you know, figment of you know, whatever. But you know, it was just a wild story. He seems convinced of it, but doesn't, you know, do a good job convincing others of it. You know, I know you'll have his speech patterns and all, you know, discussed later in the show, but all of it, you know, anytime I'm saying honestly, believe me, yeah, it's just a wild tale.
Michael, it's hard to get your head around his success as a JAG attorney. He did very well for a long period of time. What happened to this dude, do you think?
It's hard to say. And listen, John and I have seen this over the course of our career. Simply because somebody's educated, intelligent, successful, it doesn't make them immune from committing crimes, especially crimes of passion, where they have a relationship with a wife or a husband and they want to move forward and, you know, want life insurance policies and looking to make it easier for themselves so they can move forward. I don't know where he went wrong, so to speak. But he clearly is a very accomplished, very educated, very intelligent human being. But again, going back to my point, so what? Doesn't make him immune from committing crimes. And I think this is a classic case where I said this again last week, smartest guy in the room, but it really backfired. What he should have done is something John and I would have encouraged him to do, not say a word. That all came back and bit him.
Here's a bit of him talking about McIntyre and how he just, well, he had to give him everything.
I gave Jim McIntyre access to literally everything. I believed because of the investigation and that it was necessary. Financials, you know, my bank accounts, my email accounts, my social media accounts, Absolutely everything. And so did Mindi.
I'm sorry, tell me the full list, if you will, of everything that you gave Jim McIntyre access to.
He had access to our home. He had a spare key to our home as well as the alarm code while we lived there. He had all of our bank accounts, USAA and a couple others that we had tried to pick up to do that. He had, at this point, our mail.
John Phillips, do you think jurors were fighting back smirks during this, or is it possible that one juror was dialed in and thinking, wow, this Jim McIntyre, scary?
I think today's jurors also live in 2025, where we're just kind of a little apprehensive with the FBI and federal government, law enforcement, not just us that have criminal defense and civil rights backgrounds. You don't give mystery FBI agents the right to write checks. Like at one point he said thought he was paying his mortgage, and divorces make people crazy. And again, you've got somebody that's super cerebral, but but for all intents and purposes, he's also being charged with murder and dismembering. So let's not give him too much credit. But it's wild, and certainly you never know with a jury, you never know. But I just can't imagine without some level of proof. You buttress this up, you put walls around, say, oh, here's text messages, here's Jim, hey, but not in this trial.
Yeah, nothing from Jim McIntyre that even exists at all. Michael, the prosecution did an excellent job of bringing in people that had been lied to before by the defendant, basically setting this jury up to be skeptical. How did you think that they handled the whole case, including the cross-examination here of this defendant?
I love it. And Lori Bea, who's the prosecutor, she's an old friend of mine. We handled a lot of cases against each other here in Suffolk County, New York, before she decided to go down south. What she did, she kind of knew that this was the way they were going. They were going with this Jim McIntyre story, that he had to get up on the stand and present that type of scenario. So what she wanted to do is make him, before he even took the stand, a liar. And she did it effectively. She brought in all these people, regardless of what the conversation was about, showing that he lied to her. He lied to these people, I should say, over the course of years, making up excuses, different stories that clearly were not truthful. So then it all set it up for when he takes the stand. The jury is already skeptical of what he is and who he is and what he's about to say. And then she nailed it home with the cross-examination. So I think she did a very effective job, and I think she did a good job.
Yes, absolutely. It's every now and then you get a defendant that just catches your attention. You're like, wow. This dude's something else. We're going to keep talking about him while we wait to see what this jury decides. Coming up, more of Nicholas Cassotus.
Did you kill your wife, Mindi Kassotis?
I absolutely did not. I've never put my hands on a woman. I've never hurt a woman. I would never have hurt Mindi.
What did his body language tell us? His speech pattern, anything there? We're going to analyze it. And a serial killer's daughter allegedly murdered 2 decades later. Her body is found and an arrest is made. The preview of the killer's daughter murder trial for Christopher Wolfenbarger, that's ahead as well.
The Court TV podcast will return.
Sir, I've just been informed by your counsel that you intend to testify today. I do need to advise you that under the Fifth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution and also the Georgia Constitution, that you have a right against self-incrimination. That is, you have a right to remain silent. Do you understand that right?
Yes, sir.
Nicholas Cassotus did not remain silent as jury deliberations are set to begin this morning. It is his time on the witness stand that is trending this morning and will be the main focus of this jury. He got up there, even the way he raises his hand with such military precision there to take the oath. He's, of course, accused of butchering his wife, Mindi, spreading her remains across some hunting land. The former Navy JAG officer, he detailed everything from law school to living on the run while he was on the stand, but it was his alleged relationship with the man named Jim McIntyre which grabbed our attention, a man who, according to Cassotis, controlled the lives of not only himself, but his victim as well.
So you moved to the Airbnb in Hilton Head. How long were you there?
I don't know that it was an Airbnb. It was a vacation rental. I never saw any of these rental documents. So we were there for no more than a week, and then we were told to move and go to a different rental, also in Hilton Head.
Who told you to move?
Jim McIntyre.
Why?
Because he said that if we stayed in one place too long, that we might be found, that it was dangerous.
How were you feeling at this time?
I was frankly terrified. I mean, even, we had our dog Rusty. Bringing Rusty out to the bathroom was kind of a fraught exercise. I was always worried that somebody was going to be driving by and see us.
Oh, poor Rusty. Let's take a closer look at Cassotis' language, his body language, and his speech pattern. Here to break it all down, his body language expert, Rodney Smith. Rodney, what stood out to you? First, let's talk about this last clip there from Cassotis.
One of the first things that I noticed is his enunciation as to how direct he is. He is very, I don't want to say animated, but he is very open. He gives direct eye contact with the members of the jury. He's speaking very, very loudly. We don't see it in this clip, but he's speaking so loud as to the point where he does not have to get closer to the mic as we see him during the cross-examination. He's sitting more upright. As I said, he's speaking in such a manner as to be able to almost be animated, to the sense of he's telling this story and he wants everyone to understand the exact words that he's saying.
Yeah, very clear. Here's more from Wednesday. Big moment here when Cassotis denies killing Mindi.
Did you kill your wife, Mindi Kassotis?
I absolutely did not. I've never put my hands on a woman. I've never hurt a woman. I would never have hurt Mindi.
Did you strike her on the head up to 9 times?
Never. Never, not once.
Did you dispose of her body?
No, never.
Did you dismember her body?
No, absolutely not. Frankly, I'm not great with blood, so as anyone who's ever given me a doctor's exam can tell you, that is not something that is even remotely possible for me.
All right, what do you think, Rodney?
Well, at the onset, whenever he first talking, where he asked him if he killed his wife, if you were to look at this clip without even any volume, the first thing that you notice is that his head starts moving almost in the affirmative. You see this upward head up and down movement, as we typically affiliate the word yes with the acknowledgement of I did do something or I completed some type of task. But he gives also these qualifiers. I absolutely did not. And then he goes on next to give this, let me tell you how good of a guy he is. I would never do this to a woman. And then he says, I would never, or I would never do this to Mindi. And by saying I would never doesn't mean that you did not. When we say that we would never do something, doesn't mean that you haven't done something of that nature in the past. However, also with this, he starts to go on and give more information. Basically, you can ask others on my behalf that the sight of blood, and he gives this chuckle, which we're talking about killing someone. This is not a laughing matter. So I guess he's trying to give this insight to downplay this entire scenario, that a guy like me, you can ask others on my behalf, especially those that know me, at the sight of blood, I fall to pieces. So there's a lack of congruency in what we see here. Number one, with the nodding of the head. Then number two, he's giving these qualifiers, I absolutely did not. Then he gives these resume statements of how great of a guy he is, and then follows up with the I would never, which doesn't mean that you haven't done it in the past. and then goes off to downplay the entire situation by saying at the sight of blood, I would completely be a wreck.
Yeah, couldn't have been me. I don't like blood. You ask my doctor. He'll tell you. Let's pick up some cross-examination here. He's questioned by the prosecution on picking up his wife's ashes and the moment that his car supposedly caught on fire.
When you went to pick up your wife's ashes, you indicated that was in Alabama?
Yes, ma'am. Montgomery, Alabama.
And you gave him $5,000 cash?
Yes, ma'am.
No paperwork?
No, ma'am.
No name?
I'm sorry, no name?
He didn't give you his name?
He might have, ma'am. I'm unsure. I don't remember. It was a very brief meeting.
Receiving your wife's ashes on the side of the road in Alabama for $5,000 cash, you didn't think you needed any documents as an attorney?
No, ma'am. I was pretty angry about the entire exchange.
That was a no, correct?
Correct, ma'am.
And I just want to make sure I understand. Your car burst into flames in the condition we saw it in this courtroom on your way to purchase a house.
Yes, ma'am.
You never bought the house, right?
Correct, ma'am.
Because you had a check for $860,000, I believe you said, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
That you said burnt up, right?
Along with parts of me, ma'am.
All right, here, some physical things that are happening. What'd you pick up there, Rodney?
So at the onset, whenever she first starts to talk about this meeting, one of the first things that we see is he actually takes a deep swallow just before he actually starts to talk about the actual meeting that he did with this individual. We notice at certain parts and variations, the cross-examination, the prosecutor is hammering him. There are several times where he goes from this, where he was very animated from the beginning of the testimony that he first talked about his resume. We start to notice a lot of rapid eye blinking. I think at one point in time, I watched some of the clips and I saw where he went from what would be considered the average of about 15 to 20 times of blinks in a minute to 64 times. As in the clip we just saw right there after he answers the question, he's trying to maintain his composure as best as he can, but he gives this little swirl almost to release that negative energy, that tension that is built up inside of him, almost to say, let me hit the reset button, because from my perspective, we can see that he is under a great deal of stress. She's not letting down. She's not even giving him an accurate amount of time to basically sit there and regroup himself, because that sympathetic nervous system on his behalf right now is working overtime.
Do lay people, jurors in this case, pick up on these things, maybe not analytically, not consciously, but do we as just human beings, when we're around someone who's being deceitful, have an innate ability to pick that up?
I would say body language and nonverbal communication is basically our first language. When we're born, we don't have the ability to communicate and verbally speak with others. So the first thing that we learn how to do is read and analyze people's behaviors, emotions, and the different things that they display to us. With this gentleman having such an impressive resume at the beginning, coupled with what we already know from our childhood, just a lot of the things that he says to be so intelligent, it almost shows that he has such a huge lack of common sense. And I think for the lay person to be able to couple that with just those small nuances that when they refer back to things that they would say for themselves, something doesn't look right or something doesn't feel right, more so that gut feeling, I believe that the jury is not going to be swayed or convinced in his characteristics as he tries to come across in his charming behavior.
Rodney Smith, as always, thanks for the lesson. And we'll see what this jury decides, what they did pick up. Still ahead on opening statements, we're spotlighting a new trial, calling it the killer's daughter murder trial, a case that went cold for 25 years until now. And breaking overnight, a verdict reached in the fugitive sex offender trial. Nicholas Rossi, another guy that had some issues with the truth, he was found guilty in Utah. We'll look ahead to his sentencing. Stay with us.
Now, back to the Court TV podcast.
In the spotlight this morning, a new trial out of the state of Georgia. Opening statements expected today in the killer's daughter murder trial for defendant Christopher Wolfenbarger. He's standing trial for the 25-year-old cold case murder of his wife, who was the daughter of a convicted serial killer. Melissa Wolfenbarger went missing back in 1998. At the time, her husband, Christopher, claimed that she left on her own accord and said he never reported her missing because he assumed she'd moved on with her life. He was always a person of interest, but not arrested until August of last year. Here's Court TV's Cody Thomas.
It's been a long wait, 25 years. But finally, hopefully, we would get justice for Melissa.
A Georgia man is now standing trial for the cold case murder of his wife, Melissa Wolfenbarger.
I've gathered the facts, and I collaborated with the DA's office and was able to get the facts together to come up with the probable cause to arrest Christopher Wolfenbarger.
We have finally made it. He's in custody. And now we just need to get over the last hurdle and get him convicted.
Christopher claimed back in 1998 that Melissa left on her own accord and never returned, but was arrested in August 2024, 25 years after Melissa's remains and severed head were found in trash bags.
I'm pretty sure it's domestic violence. He was captured in his home in Griffin. He hid. It took the detectives a little while to find him, and they found him, I believe, hiding behind a dryer.
Police also suspected Melissa's father, Carl Patton, a serial killer who committed 5 murders across Georgia from 1973 to 1977. News Nation's Ashley Banfield spoke with Melissa's mother about his reaction to the arrest of Christopher.
He was devastated when he found out she had been murdered, but he was deliriously happy as soon as he found out Chris had been arrested.
Christopher, who has pleaded not guilty, now faces life in prison for the murder of his wife, but her family says they knew since day one that he was responsible.
From day one, we knew it was Christopher. There was never, ever any doubt in our minds who did this.
All right, here to discuss criminologist, author, and professor at St. Thomas University, Dr. Debbie Goodman is with us, and criminal defense attorney Michael J. Brown back. All right, Dr. Debbie, the victim's father, Carl Patton Jr., is a serial, known as the Flint River Killer. Killed 5 people in the 70s. What do you? Is it just a coincidence? It is. Do you think it plays into anything here? I mean, it sounds like they're totally separate incidents. This guy's, if he is indeed guilty, Wolfenbarger, he's the husband that killed a wife. You know, I see that all the time. What's your take on that connection, the serial killer element of this odd case?
Certainly. Good morning, Ted and Michael. And odd it is, odd, bizarre. You know, we're used to talking about these cases that are so shocking and surprising and unsettling. But my goodness, Ted, this unsavory cast of characters, what a motley crew we have here, starting with Christopher. You know, just basic victimology is investigators are always looking at with whom does the victim most interact. So certainly the spouse, the parents, the children, and the fact that they had disharmony and discord in their marriage to where she did get a protective order. That would be a real red flag as to this individual's involvement. Now, as you submit this serial killer father, Carl Patton, you see, interestingly, we wouldn't necessarily look toward him, believe it or not. Why, Ted? Because if we look at patterns of serial killers, many of whom, by the way, are married, to include names we know, John Wayne Gacy, Gary Ridgway, Dennis Rader, they tend to be married for long times, never harming their own wives nor children. So it's just a bizarre circumstance. And let us not forget Miss Norma, by the way, who was no saint in this either. She too participated, yet she did offer testimony in exchange for her immunity. But what a bizarre case we have. I hope we will have justice for Melissa as well as her 2 children who did grow up without their mother.
Yeah, Michael, you have some experience in this sort of scenario. How does the fact of the serial killer dad factor in? Do you think in the initial search for Melissa do you think that maybe there was maybe she didn't get the attention that she should have, because boy, it seems as though they 25 years ago had a real solid lead in the husband and didn't follow through, or just never got to a conviction?
Yeah, Ted, I don't think the fact that her father was a convicted murderer has any bearing on whether or not there's going to be a zealous investigation and prosecution. I think they're two independent things, and clearly Melissa had absolutely nothing to do with her father's acts and the mom's acts. So I don't think that had any bearing on it. I think what happened in this case, and I looked at some of the things that they were looking at, the body was dismembered, so that leads to a non-random type of situation. It wasn't like a random burglary or rape, generally speaking. They were married, and he never reported it, which is very odd. Then you find out she sought an order of protection. So clearly there was something going on in the household. And I think the icing on the cake for the prosecution and the investigation was, hey, the body parts were found directly across from where the defendant actually worked. Now, they probably knew it was him, but the issue then becomes, do we have enough to pursue an arrest? And those are two different things. I'm interested in looking and seeing what the actual evidence is, but I think once they got those four components, they were focusing on the husband, but they needed more to make the actual arrest and the prosecution.
Yeah, and sometimes do eyes, too, can make a difference in a case like this. Then they went after him, got him. Interesting, he was hiding behind a dryer, so he knew that they were obviously coming 25 years later. Here's Norma Patton, married to the serial killer, talking about how they didn't report her missing. And she's talking to our friend Ashley Banfield on News Nation. Take a listen.
What was it that kept you from going to the police about Melissa's, situation? Was it because Carl had his own issues and was headed to prison?
No, that had absolutely nothing to do with it. It boiled down to the police not willing to take a missing persons report because she was over 18. Of course, she was 21. She was married. So, it wasn't my responsibility, really, to report her as missing.
I don't know about that, Dr. Debbie Goodman. That seems off the wall. What's your take?
Exactly what you just said, Ted. Again, off the wall, bizarre. Who says that your child is missing? It doesn't matter how old they are. Of course, law enforcement representatives will react and respond to that with deep concern and want to investigate. So I do not believe Miss Norma. I think that she knew exactly what her husband was doing. She also participated and therefore did not want to bring the attention nor the spotlight on the Patton family, because then potentially more evidence would be revealed.
Michael, we're expecting opening statements here in an hour or so. Is the defense, do you believe the defense is going to bring up to this jury, hey, our guy didn't do it, and by the way, her dad, serial killer, maybe he did it. Will they use this to their advantage, do you believe?
I think so, Ted. I think they're going to use any alternate suspect theory that they can. I think they're going to go with that potentially. I was under the impression that they've excluded him as a potential suspect. I don't know the significance or the strength of that exclusion. But yeah, I think it's going to be something they're going to pursue in the sense of he possibly could be a suspect and name other potential suspects as well.
All right. Dr. Debbie Goodman, as always, thanks for your expertise on this Thursday morning. Michael's going to stick around. Coming up, Nicholas Rossi found guilty of rape. Reaction from the verdict in the fugitive sex offender trial as we look forward to sentencing, and jury deliberations expected to begin this morning in the dismembered wife murder trial. Stay with us.
This is the Court TV Podcast.
He spoke in a British accent, that he claimed this case had nothing to do with him and insisted that he was Arthur Knight instead of Nicholas Rossi. Finally, in October of 2024, he admitted under oath that he was Nicholas Rossi and Nicholas Alaverdian, and we will ask you to find the defendant, Nicholas Alaverdian, guilty of rape.
And that is exactly what the jury did. Breaking overnight, the jury found defendant Nicholas Rossi Alaverdian guilty of rape due to a court order. We couldn't bring you this verdict live. We had to wait a little bit, but we have it now. Take a listen.
The jury is now in the courtroom and the parties are present. Counsel, with the four-person you have selected, please stand. Have you reached a verdict in this case?
Yes, we have, Your Honor.
Could you please hand the verdict form to the bailiff? The bailiff will hand it to me, and I will hand it to my clerk to read.
In the state of Utah versus Nicholas Edward Rossi, case number 221-906-768. We, the jurors in the above case, unanimously find the defendant as follows. To count 1, rape, guilty. Dated this 13th day of August, 2025, signed the foreperson.
Is this your verdict?
This is our verdict.
Counsel, is there anything further on this case before the jury is discharged?
Can we have the jury polled, please?
Yeah. I would like each member of the jury, the verdict form in front of you states guilty. Raise your hand if that was your verdict. The court notes that all 8 members of the jury unanimously found guilty.
All right, there it was, guilty for Nicholas Rossi, went by Arthur Knight for a while he was in Scotland, guilty of sexual assault against an ex-girlfriend. Back in 2008, he did fake his own death as part of this scenario when he went to Scotland and changed his name to Arthur Knight. He claimed he was an orphan and named after King Arthur. He was a doozy. I mean, you talk about Nicholas Cassotis, well, old Nicholas Rossi was right up there. 2 Nicholases, same week, Court TV, and insanity, bananas. Rossi's going to be scheduled for sentencing October 20th. Michael J. Brown, John Phillips. No surprise here. Your thoughts, John?
I mean, bananas is pretty good. You know, I almost made a joke. I'm sorry, do you call me John? My name is, Todd Prince. Like, I'm just going to change my identity just like that. But Arthur Knight in Scotland is just, it's just preposterously bad. But, so is this guy, and I think he's got more justice coming his way. But this was a wild one.
Michael, the defendant here can't, he didn't testify, but the victim did, and she really brought this thing to life. And it just happened in 2008. It was a while ago. She got very emotional though when she talked about Rossi and what he did. He was very charming, seemed very interested in school and politics, and he basically took her for a ride. She had just suffered a brain injury, and he kind of wooed her, and then she went into the details, forcing me to have sex with him, afraid, frozen, and as she said, it was a little bit more timid back then and was unable to stand up for herself. How important was her, and in any of these cases, the victim coming to take the stand and really bringing the jury into that moment, because she seemed to really hit it out of the park?
Yeah, these are very difficult cases, Ted, for the prosecution, because you have to put on a very sensitive, traumatized victim / complaining witness who's going to be subject to cross-examination. So they are difficult cases to prove. What's interesting here, he didn't take the stand, but they destroyed him character-wise. And really, it was based on what we call consciousness of guilt. He changes his name. He fakes his death. They have videos of him faking a British accent. So what this does is it shows he's evasive. He tried to avoid prosecution, avoid apprehension, and that all goes to this strong argument of consciousness of guilt, even though he never took the stand. And what that does is it kind of backs up and supports the victim's testimony, and that's where they really got that conviction, coupled with the fact that they were able to bring in this other victim on an unrelated case, common plan or scheme, very similar type of rape allegation, reinforced everything.
Yeah, it's like the New York Molyneux witness. It's a great tool that prosecutors use, John Phillips. And to that point, he didn't take the stand, but the jurors got to know him, and the prosecution leaned into his bizarre behavior. So in a case that's that old, that is a he said, she said, now all of a sudden this victim has instant credibility, and the defendant is going to be looked at very skeptically, correct?
Correct. We were nodding our head at exactly on sync. You know, that's always good. But it's, yeah, I mean, credibility. What more was he going to say when they brought up all the, faking death and changing names and again, consciousness of guilt. And I'm never surprised anymore by the types of guys that pull this coercive control over. I've got an intake this morning about a similar type case where, a person that could woo and talk the talk, wound up coercively controlling somebody and having similar facts to this case on the civil side. And, you really just got to dig deep into the perpetrator. And oftentimes you see, just flawed humans that just think they can get away with everything and the world is at their, beck and call.
Yeah, I was just looking at the photos of him in Scotland with his hat, and he's got the whole thing. If you have time, you should Google Andrea Canning Dateline podcast of interviewing him. It is literally a Monty Python skit, the way he delivers it. Michael, people have this power over other individuals, but it's very rare that a defendant can pull it off in front of jurors, like we're seeing with the Cassotis case, too, that you may have manipulated an individual, but you enter the justice system and things change pretty quickly.
Yeah, yes and no, Ted. I mean, sometimes you have these really charming, manipulative people who are able to sell their story to a jury. Other times under cross-examination, because you got to remember, now you're being challenged versus just that relationship outside of a courtroom. But when you have a strong prosecutor who's able to challenge that individual, their whole tale can be unwoven and really exposed in front of the jurors. But I have seen instances where you have these individuals who can get up on the stand and really dazzle a bunch of jurors and sell their story.
Yeah, I guess it makes sense. Especially, and it could have been in this case because it was a he said, she said, but the nonsense surrounding it didn't fly. Rossi, Arthur Knight, whatever you want to call him, he went down last night. We'll see what happens to Cassotis. The jury expected to get that case later today, actually just in a few hours. Michael J. Brown, John Phillips, as always, thank you very much for your expertise. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday. That does it for opening statements this morning.
That's all for this episode of Opening Statements, my friends. I'm your host, Julie Grant, and it's been great being with you. On this show, I am calling out any pants on fire moments in our big trials and true crime stories, and I want you to come along with me. Opening Statements is live every weekday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern on Court TV. Thank you for downloading this episode. Please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your friends. You can watch past shows anytime you like on CourtTV.com.